Hi, welcome to my video on function notation and transformations. We're talking about a quadratic function, which is the parabola, and the function notation is denoted by f of x. Recall, the f of x is really the y value in the equation. The mapping rules, let's go over the mapping rules. The transformation is, and we're going to use the ordered pairs first, and then we're going to use the mapping rule with the function notation. If you have a reflection in the x-axis, if you reflect in the x-axis, then you are changing the y to a negative. And the mapping rule for that is x, comma, remember, f of x is the y, map to, x is map to negative f of x. A reflection in the y-axis, if you reflect in the y-axis, you're changing the x to a negative x. When you reflect in the y, you're going across and you change the x to a negative x. And the mapping rule is x, comma, f of x. Remember, the f of x is the y. And we're changing the x, so it's the negative x to f of negative x. So notice we change the x to negative x. So negative x goes here and negative x goes here. The vertical stretch is on the y, so it's an a times y times. So the mapping rule is x, comma, f of x, because the f of x is the y, and it's x to a times f of x. Notice a times y, a times f of x. And horizontal translation is in terms of the x, so it's x plus or minus h, comma, y. So the mapping rule is the f of x, and we're changing the x to x plus h and f of x plus h. And the horizontal translation is affecting the y, so we add plus or minus k. Remember, h and k are h is the horizontal shift and k is the vertical shift. And we have x, comma, f of x, because that's the function notation. Y is f of x, again, keep repeating that. X does not change, so it's the y plus or minus k, so it's the f of x plus or minus k. Okay, that's the transformations, different transformations in the ordered pairs x and y, or in the function notation. Same idea, same thing. Remember, f of x is the y. State the transformation on the f of x equals x squared for each. So the transformation here is a 4 times f of x, so it's a vertical stretch of 4. Transformation here is x minus 2, so it's 2 gone to the right, it's the opposite. And f of x, negative x, x is changing to negative x, so it's a reflection in the y-axis. F of x plus 1 is 1 added to the y, so it's up 1. And this is the negative of y, so it's, if you change the negative, y changes, so that's a reflection reflected in the x-axis. When you change x to a negative x, reflection in y. When you change a y to a negative y, is a reflection in the x. And let's continue. State the transformation on each. Just more practice. Now remember, you always pause your video at any time and work these out before I do. And what we're doing here, we got the negative y, so we always do the reflection first, reflect it, and the pencil is going. Okay, back again. Reflected in the x-axis, when you change y to a negative y, and you got a vertical stretch of 3 because it's 3 times the y. Here it's inside the bracket, so it's a -4, so it's gone 4 left, and it's gone 6 up. 6 is added to whatever this y value is. And there's a negative here, so it's again reflected because of the negative outside of the y is reflected in the x-axis. And it's gone -1 is 1 down. And number 4, we have 2 times f of x minus 6. That's a vertical stretch of equals 2. And that's a -6, so it's a +6, so it's gone 6 right. It's always the opposite of what's in the bracket. And right here we have a negative, so it's reflected in the x-axis. We got a vertical stretch. It's a half times what the y is. It's a vertical stretch of a half. And we have x minus 2, so it's gone 2 right because it's the opposite of, it's a +2. If you put 2 in here, you get 0, so it's gone 2 to the right. And +3 is 3 up. Write each transformation in terms of f of x for the parabola. Write each transformation in terms of f of x of the parabola. So the transformation equation, if we want that, it's reflected in the x, so it's the negative of f of x and up right, because it goes right, that means it's affecting the x, so it's the opposite. I was going to put it on the outside then. So right and left is dealing with the x, so the opposite of to go right is +7, so the equation got a -7, so it's the negative of f of bracket of x minus 7. Vertical stretch of 6, so 6 times the f of x, and there's no down is affecting the y, so it's down is a -5. We go left 4. Left 4 is a minus, so we have a plus in the bracket. Up 3 is a +3. Reflected in the x-axis is a negative. Vertical stretch of 2 is 2 times, and again just the f of x because there's no horizontal translations or horizontal or vertical translations. And down 4, it's affecting the y, so it's f of x -4 is down. Except for that little mistake right there, again right is affecting the x, so +7 becomes a -7. So that's the, again to make it clear, negative of f of x -7. Let me take that out and go like this so you can make sure. Reflecting in the x is changing the y. State the transformation on each in terms of the parabola. Okay, what transformation? So notice we have the parabola, and this is the transformation. So notice we got the negative. The negative is reflected in the x-axis, and the +3, it goes up 3. And the transformation here, there's no negative in front, so it's not reflected. And there's no number in front, so there's no vertical stretch. But it's gone, the opposite is a -4, so it's gone 4 left. Remember, it's always the opposite of what a bracket is. And the -1 is affecting the y, so it's gone down 1. And number 3, we have f of x. We got a 4 times the bracket. Okay, so we have a vertical. Notice there's no negative, so it's not reflected in the x-axis. Vertical stretch of 4. And it's opposite of a -7, so it's +7, so it's +7 right. And a plus 2 is affecting added onto the y, so it's up 2. Number 4, again we have a negative 6x squared minus 3. Notice we have no bracket. Because of the negative, it's reflected in the x-axis. 6 is a vertical stretch of 6, and there's no brackets, so we have no horizontal translation, and it's gone minus 3 is gone down 3. And next ones, don't forget to pause the video, see if you get the right answers. State the vertex of each parabola. The vertex of this parabola, remember, the vertex is the h comma k, so it's x minus 2, so it's the opposite is a plus 2, and the k is 1. Notice when you put a 2 right here, 2 minus 2 is 0. 0 squared is 0. So when you put 2 in, you get the 0. And when you put 2 in, then the f of x becomes 1, or the y becomes 1. Remember, f of x is the y, so that's y equals. F of x, don't get fooled. So notice if you do this, the f of 2 is equal to 1. So that's an ordered pair of 2, f of 2, if you want to think of it that way. Or we think of an ordered pair as x comma y. Think of f of x as the y, and it's not so confusing. So the f of 2, when you plug 2 in, the f of 2, x is 2, plug 2 in, you'll get 1. So that's the same when x is 2, y is 1. That's the same there. So the x is 2, so the f of 2, so that's the 1. So that's 2 comma 1 right here, same as this. F of x equals x squared minus 3, the vertex. Notice there's no, if you think about it, it's this x squared plus 0x minus 3. So there's no x coordinate, so the x coordinate of the vertex is 0, and the y is a negative 3. So h is 0, k is negative 3. And number 3, the vertex here is, notice we have vertex, the opposite of the bracket is a negative 1. And we have no number on the end, so I'm going to put a plus 0 there, so we got a negative 1, 0. When you put a negative 1 in here, negative 1 plus 1 is 0, 0 squared is 0, negative 4 times 0 is 0. So when you put a negative 1 in, the f of x becomes, or the y becomes 0. Number 1, find the equation of the parabola in as f of x equals ax squared plus x minus h all squared plus k. That's the vertex form. So if that's the vertex form, that's the vertex of h comma k, and this is x, y. Remember, they're both x's and y's, but because this is a vertex, it's a special one called h comma k. If it's h comma k, the f of x, another way to do it is, watch this, another way to do it so it won't be so confusing is really call the f of x the y and deal with it like we did before. And when you're finished, change it back. So if you let the f of x be the y and deal with it with the y there, it's not so confusing. So we got y equals a. This is a 3, so this becomes opposite, so it's an x minus 3. Minus 2, so remember we change this one to a minus and we don't change this one. Now we put the xy in, y is 14 and x is 5. And then we simplify that, so that becomes 2 squared is 4 minus 2. So that becomes negative 4a equals negative 2 minus 14. Negative 4a is negative 16. Divide by negative 4, and a becomes 4. So we got y equals a is 4, so we put the a in the equation. And the vertex is, we have an x minus 3, because the opposite of this with a minus 2. So I rewrote this equation here because I found the value of a, so I put the a in here with this. And now that I have the equation in terms of y, then I change it to the f of x. And that's the way I've been doing it for years with my students, so they don't get confused with the f of x. Change the f of x to y and work it out per normal that you're used to doing. And number 2, again, pause the video. Work these out yourself and see how you're going to do. Find the equation of the parabola as f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Remember, f of x is a y. So y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Now we have, this is the form we want, which is like this, but we have a vertex. And again, the vertex is h comma k. And the y-intercept, is on the y-axis. The y-intercept is 1. That means the x is 0. So that's my x comma y. So if I take the y-intercept of -1 to change it to an ordered pair of 0, -1, then I write down the equation as y equals ax minus h all squared plus k, because I have a vertex. So y equals -1 goes in the equation, and the opposite of -1 is a +1, +3. So we change this one. Really, just look. If you go x minus, if h is -1, x subtract -1, negative of a negative is a positive. So that's why we're changing the sign. So if this is a minus, in the bracket becomes x plus 1, and the y stays, because when you put a -1 here, this becomes 0, and so y is 3. So we change this one, but not this one. Now we put the ordered pair in. Y is -1. X is 0. We take our time and simplify that. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 squared is 1, so we get an a, 1a plus 3. And we can leave the a there now and do this. We can move it to the left. We could do this, move the a to the left and move the 1 to the right, and then divide by -1 or multiply by -1. We get the -4. Or we can leave the a here and move to 3, and we'll get the negative. So if you leave the a here and move to 3, we still get a is -4 without dividing by the negative. So anyway, we have the equation y equals a is -4, and it's an x plus 1 squared plus 3. Now we want, this is in the vertex form, so we got to change it to the what we call the standard form. So -4 bracket x plus 1, x plus 1. We're squaring it, so I'll multiply it out. Write it down twice. I'll do my FOIL first. That's what I like to do. Do the FOIL first. X times x is x squared. X times 1 is 1x. 1 times x is 1x. 1 times 1 is 1. And we simplify that to make it easier, less to deal with. So x plus x is 2x. So that's simplified. And now we multiply by -4. -4 times x squared. -4x squared. -4 times 2x, -8x. -4 times 1 is -4. So we have y equals -x squared minus 8x minus 1. And we want it in the f of x form, so we change the y to an f of x. We did all this before in the previous videos, but now we've got the f of x there, making it a little bit more confusing. And again, the f of x. What about if you wanted a 0? What's the f of 0? If you got a 0, you get a -1. So if you put the f of 0, put 0 in here. This is a part. I'm just showing you this is extra. What about if you put x is 0? So the f of 0 would be, this is just extra now, just showing you. And so the f of 0, that becomes a 0. That becomes a 0 minus 1. So the f of 0 is negative 1. So I'm just using the notation, function notation, to say we're going to put x0 in for x. So if I had this one and I put 0 in for x, I would get exactly the same as this. So if I put 0 in here, I get y to be negative 1. So when I put the f of 0, which means x is 0, I get negative 1. So f of x is negative 1. So the ordered pair, x is 0, y is negative 1. Number 3, that's just a little extra explaining about the function notation. Find the equation of the parabola as f of x equals a bracket x minus s times bracket x minus t. This form is the factored form. So we have to write it in the factored form. Again, the f of x is your y. So I'm going to dealing with the y. And then I'll change it after. So y equals a outside of x minus s, x minus t. And as in all brackets, because that's x-intercepts, this is the x-intercept form, so that minus becomes a plus, and that plus becomes a minus. So this is the factored form. These are factored form, which means these are the intercepts. When you put a negative 2 right here, negative 2 plus 2 is 0, and 0 times all of this will give you y 0. Remember, an x-intercept of negative 2 is negative 2, 0. A y-intercept of 4 is 4, 0. So when you put a negative 2 in this equation, all of this becomes 0, so y is 0. When you put a 4 in this equation, we put a 4 here and a 4 here. The 4 minus 4 is 0, so 0 times this expression gives you y 0 again. So notice the x-intercepts, when you put them in the equation, is the opposite of, the same as this vertex, the x-coordinate of your vertex. Right here you change it, so you change these. Now that I have those put in opposite signs, then this is the x and the y passing through. So I put y as negative 6, x is 2, so y is negative 6, x is 2, so I put 2 here and 2 here, and take my time and simplify it. 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 minus 4 is negative 2. Multiply, I get negative 8a. Now I can divide by negative 8, or I can flip them, whatever way you want. So I'll do it two ways. You can move the 8 over, make it a plus. Move the 6 over, make it a plus. And then divide by 8. And you'll get 3/4. Or you can divide by negative 8 right now. Just as it is. They cancel. So a is 3/4, either way. So if you move the negative to the left and the number to the right, they become plus 8a plus 6 and divide by 8, or you can leave the a there and divide by negative 8. Still get the same answer. So the equation becomes a is 3/4, and the x-intercept negative 2 becomes x plus 2, and a plus 4 becomes a minus 4. So that's the equation in the factored form, which is what we want. And we have to put it in the f of x notation. So y is equal to the f of x. And again, if you did x is 2, the f of 2, you put 2 in, and you will come up with negative 6. That's all that means. That's the function notation. Just try it. What's x? X is 2. Watch, x is 2, so the f of 2 means x is 2. So it's exactly, I'm just showing you the f of 2, x is 2. Now this equation right here is very similar to this. So I put the 2 here, and that's what I did here. So the f of 2 becomes 3/4, 4 minus 2. And we cancel, we get 1s. So that gives me negative 6. So the f of 2 gives me negative 6. So that means when x is 2, x is 2, f of x is negative 6. F of x is the y. So the f of 2, x is 2, y is negative 6. Don't get confused on the function notation. Just be careful. And that brings us to the end of the video. If you like my video, click the like button, the subscribe button, and notification bell. Visit my website, www.mathfullyexplained.com, to find more information about me, my videos, and the content. And that's the content that's on my YouTube channel called Math Fully Explained. Thank you for viewing my video. Bye-bye.